Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee, DJ Envy is off, and we have 2020 Democratic presidential candidate and author of the new book, A Politics of Love. Marianne Williamson is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
How
That's
you
a great
feeling?
title
I'm
for
great,
a book.
thank you. How are you?
That's a great title.
Yeah?
Right now.
Look at the subtitle.
A Handbook for a New American Revolution. Explain a little bit.
I think that we need a fundamental pattern disruption of the economic and social and political status quo in this country. And I don't think that will come from incremental change. I think we need a genuine nonviolent revolution. You know, and it's a revolution of consciousness. It begins with something inside us, and awakening from the delusion that if we just make incremental change or go along with the same old, even the better version of the same old, that will actually stop the slide that has been occurring for the last 40 years. We have 40% of all Americans who live with chronic economic tension and anxiety. That will not be changed by just tweaking things here and tweaking things there.
You need a whole economic overhaul, basically.
Well, we need to return to the principles that this country is founded on. It's principles, not policies, that will change. Because otherwise, even with deep economic change, the very things we do that are good can be repealed, that can be changed. We need transformation at a deeper level. And that has to include the consciousness of the American people, which includes the realization that the conventional political establishment is the problem. They're not the solution.
Yeah, you know, even when you say return to the principles of America, we've never had them. It's never been freedom, justice, and equality for everyone.
But that doesn't mean we didn't have the principle. That's the irony of this country. We do have the principles which were established in the Declaration of Independence. All people are created equal. God gave all people inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments were instituted to secure those rights, and it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish that government if it fails to do its job. Those are the principles, and they were established by men who actually were risking their lives to sign that document. But the irony, as we all know, is that out of 50 some odd of them, 41 of them were slave owners.
Right.
So that dichotomy has always been there. It is our characterological DNA. We have always, from the very beginning, been both. We are both these aspirational, enlightened principles, which are our mission statement. This is why Martin Luther King said, we're just here to cash a check. We're not out here for something. This was already promised to us. We have always been, in every generation, including ours, a mix of those who take this very seriously and mean it, and those who are very clear that we will not be doing that.
Oh, so we do need to alter and abolish this government because they haven't done their job.
I say with alter.
Ooh.
Let's go with alter. alter. When they were talking abolish, they meant George III. At this point, alter.
Got you.
But alter. There is a national, there is a characterological revolutionary spirit to being an American that we have forgotten. We have forgotten our rambunctiousness. In fact, it's now clear, the American Revolution is an ongoing process. It has been sustained by little mini revolutions. Abolition was a mini revolution. Women's suffrage was a mini revolution. Civil rights was a mini revolution, and we need a mini revolution right now.
What do you think about what just happened in Oklahoma and what we see going on with the opioid settlements that are happening, and Johnson & Johnson being found guilty and having to pay $572 million? We were having a discussion about that and the responsibility that these pharmaceutical companies have. So what do you think about these settlements, and you think there's going to be a whole lot more coming?
Well, there are attorney generals all over the country which are suing now, these huge pharmaceutical executives. You know, $500 million to Johnson & Johnson. I think we should ask ourselves how big an amount that is actually in the larger picture of things. I read a tweet from a man from Croatia recently, and he said, I've never known a country, speaking about us, he said, I've never known a country so invested in protecting its abusers.
Ooh.
I mean, what is it with us with Big Pharma? I mean, you know, what is it? So whether it's big pharmaceutical companies or health insurance companies or gun manufacturers or chemical companies or agribusiness companies or oil and gas companies or defense contractors or nuclear industry, the fact that we're just like, oh, well, I guess, the problem is in us. You know, at a certain point, it's not about what happens to you. It's about who you are in the space of what happens to you, whether or not you respond. None of this is new. Blacks know this, Jews know this. None of this is new. Where our generation is not dealing with anything conceptually that other generations haven't dealt with. let's just not be the first one to wimp out on doing what it takes to push this stuff back.
Is it possible, because you're all about love and peace, as most of us are, but is it possible to be morally sound in a country that's so driven by money, when everything is money, money?
This country is not a monolith. I think the American people are good people. And I don't think that the average American is driven by money. And most of the people who are driven by money are driven by money because they are placed in a survival mode.
What about the people in positions of power, though?
Well, we want to be really careful. You know this. Not every rich person is a greedy bastard any more than every poor person is noble and pure. I mean, there are billionaires who agree with everything you and I are saying here. It's corrupt systems. And I think we need to be careful about that because demonizing individuals is the opposite of a nonviolent revolution. It's calling the system on its corruption. And we are, every moment we're spending demonizing an individual, we're not spending organizing the change. And that's where we need to be.
Now, is it just me, or does the media not give you the coverage it gives other candidates?
Yeah. I didn't understand, as a matter of fact, when Joy Reid asked you, I saw you. And she said, who's been on your show really talking about reparations? And you didn't mention me.
I didn't say your name?
No, baby. And you mentioned somebody who had said a whole lot less on the topic than I had.
Who did I mention?
I don't want to say.
Kamala?
But I don't think I said it in like she was really for it, though. I think.
But it was the absence of me.
I'm
it wasn't
sorry.
that.
I apologize for that.
But I'm just saying it's in the air. It's in the ether. It's like,
Yeah.
hello, everybody. I said, Charlamagne.
There's nobody that's been talking about it as much as you. A lot of the candidates now that came out in favor of it, I think is because you sparked the conversation.
Thank you. But I think the conversation now, because we need to just keep pushing, is between reparations as quote unquote race-based policies versus reparations. And that to me is a very important distinction. Because race-based policies, first of all, it leaves open the question whose fault this is. It leaves out the historical narrative. It's separate. It's separate from what actually happened and what's actually happening. The reason reparations matter, in my opinion, is because they carry moral force. There is an inherent mea culpa. There is an inherent acknowledgement of a wrong that was done, a debt that is owed, and the willingness on the part of a people to pay it, which then releases spiritual force and emotional and psychological influence and impact that goes beyond just economic restitution.
That's kind of like with the opioid addiction. They're paying, right? They have to pay people for destroying their communities, and nowhere near, of course, on the same level, but it's kind of like a smaller version of what we're dealing with as far as reparations for slavery.
Yes, absolutely. The idea of economic reparation, economic restitution when a wrong has been done. Absolutely. And reparations for slavery should not be seen, I believe, as any different than that.
I'm not gonna lie, I do forget that you're running for president sometime, only because I just think you're just too good for it.
No.
I'm serious.
I
When I saw you on Bill Maher, I think Bill Maher said that to you, and I'm like, I agree with him totally. I just think you're too good to be running for president.
Well, that's very kind of you to say and very generous of you to say, but
Very ironic.
yeah, we're in trouble if that's the case.
Yeah.
Then we're in trouble if that's the case. First of all, I'm no better than anybody else. It's not about superior personhood, because I'm not a superior personhood, but I think the conversation that my campaign is having is politically and socially and even economically superior.
Did you see a big boost after the Democratic debates in Detroit? Because
Well, I did, and then I saw a big smear that followed that. They slapped me down real quick as soon as that was over with she's anti-medicine, she's anti-science, she's dangerous, she's crazy, she's a crystal lady, she's a grifter. I mean, that was very clear. So, somebody was like, I thought, gee, I must have upset somebody.
You are, though, kind of, right? You are all those things in a good way, though, right?
No, I'm not anti-science in any way, shape, or form.
Well, not anti-science. But
And I'm not anti-medicine in
Or a
any way, shape,
grifter.
or form. And I'm not dangerous, and I'm not crazy, and I'm not a crystal lady. Not that I have a problem with crystals, but it's just not part of my thing. And I'm hardly a grifter.
I saw you on Anderson Cooper, and y'all had a little back and forth because he brought up your old comments about antidepressants.
Well, I don't even think it's that they were old comments. It's that there was such a mischaracterization of what they mean. Because to me, the antidepressant issue is no different than what you were talking about with Big Pharma. painkillers, if you look at the opioid crisis, painkillers have a role. They're important. But what we know about big pharmaceutical executives is that they knowingly overprescribed, they knowingly overmarketed, and they overly manufactured. That's the only conversation I'm having about antidepressants, and I have in my work, and it's no different than many mental health experts are having about the possibility of overprescription of an addictive drug that might not be necessary in all cases.
You know what else is interesting to me? Like, for years, people have clearly enjoyed the things you said. They enjoyed the things that you've written, but now that you're running for president, people try to make it seem like you're so crazy.
Have you noticed that?
What do you think that's about?
What it's about is the fact that we have a gatekeeper class.
Ooh.
You know, we have a political media industrial complex, and they have created this illusion. Many of them are wonderful, wonderful people. But once again, we're calling a system, not individuals. And the system, it's created this illusion that only they. It's a little bit of Wizard of Oz, that we don't know what's going on behind the curtain, and it creates this illusion that we're to believe now, given the state of this country. And I think it's important that we look at this. Donald Trump didn't create all the he didn't create all of it. It created Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't create it. He's just this symptom that emerges from it. But the system, which actually we're to believe that only people whose careers have been entrenched for decades in the limitations of the very system that drove us into this ditch are qualified to drive us out of this ditch.
Right.
And I think we the people should go, hell no.
We need an overhaul.
Like, no. And by the way, when you look at slavery to abolition, and when you look at oppression of women to suffrage, and women's suffrage, and when you look at segregation and institutionalized white supremacy to civil rights, in none of those cases did the traditional political establishment of the time wake up one day and say, oh, let's end slavery. Let's give women the right to vote. Let's desegregate. Hell no, that's not what happened.
Right.
It was people,
Yeah.
the abolitionist movement, the suffragette movement, the civil rights movement. People rose up and people stepped in. And it is time for the people to step in again.
Kind of like in Puerto Rico, what we just saw happen in Puerto Rico.
Oh, you mean with the presidents throwing the paper towels, et cetera?
Oh, no, I meant with them actually getting their governor out.
Oh, yes, they did. And I think that's from what I have read and what I have heard, Puerto Rico will never quite be the same because they've proven to themselves what they can do. They've proven to themselves they have the capacity to say, no, this stops now. I love how even when the governor said, I won't run again, they said, no, that's not good enough.
You gotta go now.
Now. And, when you were talking about love sometimes says no. Love sometimes says no. No more.
Oh yeah, I always say the three best words you could say in regards to your mental health is fuck that shit.
Is what?
Fuck that shit. Because you got to take care of yourself. Don't do things you don't want to do, and don't go places you don't want to go.
Well, we have to learn that as citizens now, because we're in this codependent relationship with the very system that brought us to where we are.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to get cured by the people who made us sick.
That's exactly right.
I like what you said too about ushering in a new era of American history. You said you want to take down Andrew Jackson's portrait from the Oval Office, take medals away from people who fought against Native Americans.
Yes, I mean, he was good on the banks, but he was terrible when it came to Native Americans, and he really was the author of the Trail of Tears. I mean, he was a terrible, terrible, terrible person towards Native Americans, and to me, it's so insulting. I believe this whole idea of reparations for slavery and reparative measures towards Native Americans are important because, as you were saying, we need to end one aberrational history of the United States, and we need to begin a new one. It has to be that fundamental that this country says, no, no more of that. We're going there, which is the spirit out of which this country was born. Now, in order to do that, though, you can't have the future you want if you're not willing to clean up the past. And so whether it has to do with the original character defect, and I think you could certainly slavery 1619, it preceded, how do you even compare them? It's not a contest for which was more evil, but the genocide of Native Americans and slavery, we have to just clean up both of them.
So would we change everything? Like, because, the Founding Fathers had slaves, so would we take them off the money? Would we take down their statues?
No, I don't believe that. I do believe in the taking down the statues in the South.
Robert E. Lee.
Yes, but I always feel when I'm down in the South a lot, like South Carolina is one of the early primary states.
That's where I'm from.
It
Born
is-
and raised.
Where are you? Where?
I was born in Charleston, raised in a small town called Monk's Corner.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't move to New
Really?
York until 2006.
I love Charleston.
I'm there all the time.
Wow, I love Charleston. Well, maybe you could do an event with me.
Let's
Could you
do
do
it.
that?
I would
That would be amazing.
I'd love to do
That would be
something in regards
amazing.
to
So,
healing.
okay, it's on record.
Let's do it.
Thank you for that. And Beaufort is particularly, where they actually read the Emancipation Proclamation. If when I'm president and when we actually announce this plan of reparations, I think we should have the ceremony in Beaufort, South Carolina.
Ooh, Beaufort are on Gadsden's Wharf in Charleston, because that's where,
Where
if I'm not
they
mistaken,
brought-
50 to 60% of all slaves came through from West Africa. Yeah, because they're building the International African American Museum there.
Now, we also know that today's the day that they're going to decide who's going to be in the next round of presidential debates.
So this morning I came in at 1% in the Quinnipiac. The other day in the Monmouth I came in at 2%. And you have to have 2% in 4 polls in order to make it into the debate. But I'm running for president. So this is more of an expression of that gatekeeper class. The Constitution does not even mention political parties, and George Washington warned us against them in his farewell address. So I'm doing everything possible to rise to the bar, and we made the 130,000 unique donors. We didn't make it into this debate, but I hope people will go to Marianne 2020. I hope people will contribute. I hope people will continue to support this campaign so that this conversation and the political force that is emerging from this campaign will continue to rise, and I will be in the one in October.
This morning I read you were on the verge of not being in it, but now it's not.
No,
you're
I'm
gonna
not
be
in
at
it,
all?
no, because the deadline
Wow.
is today.
Yikes. Does that
So
discourage
they-
you in any way?
Pardon?
Does that discourage you in any way?
Well, it certainly saddens me in some way, but I've really prayed and reflected and talked to people whose opinion matters. I've said to people, what do you think? Do you think we're supposed to pack it in? Do you think we're supposed to say, okay? Because obviously, officialdom is saying, okay, you had your fun. No, go home now. But I have asked, and most importantly, I've asked in my heart, and everything, Martin Luther King said, your life begins to end on the day you stop talking about things that matter. This campaign is talking about things that matter and getting real about things that matter. And that's what matters, and that's what politics should be. Politics should be a conduit for our deepest thinking. And our contemporary political system is too narrow a container for the kind of thinking and conversation and action we need to be taking today. And so we have to change that. And that means we have to persevere. We just have to keep going. And we have to ask ourselves, how serious am I about this? How much am I willing to invest in this? How much am I willing to put myself into this? One of the things you have to say for racists, bigots, anti-Semites, homophobes, Islamophobes, xenophobes, they're serious. And they have become collectivized, and they are convicted, and they are politicized. We have to become as serious. There are a lot more lovers than haters in this country, clearly, but those who hate with conviction, and conviction is a force multiplier. And those of us who love and want to stand for a new possibility and are serious about what we want to say no to and serious about what we want to say yes to, we must now become convicted. We must now become politicized. We must now become as effective as are those who hate. And that does not mean to me saying, oh, okay, and going home just because the DNC says to.
Yeah.
Not now. It's too early in the process. What I feel when I am around the country, people are processing. People are thinking. We have Donald Trump in the White House. This represents a threat to our democracy. And you think it's bad now? Imagine what this man would do with a second term. So we have to think. So here I'm saying he is not just a politician, he's a phenomenon. I don't believe a traditional inside politics game will defeat him. It's a knife. He's bringing big guns to this battle. I think we have to create a phenomenon of equal force. And that will only come from really laying it down, having a real conversation, letting people know, no, we're real. We're not doing the same old, same old. We're having something real going on here. We're talking about waging peace and not just giving our national security agenda to the military-industrial complex. We're talking about actually dealing with millions of chronically traumatized children. We're talking about reparations. We're talking about a genuine holding capitalism to account, which on that one, there are other candidates, Bernie and Elizabeth, are doing that as well. And so I think people are going, yeah, she's right, but then, she's never been there, and what does it all mean, and can we risk that? And that's the process that is valid and legitimate. Don't shut that down. We all have deep thinking to do now.
If this is your last go around, in the presidential debate, what have you learned throughout this process?
That the system is as corrupt as we fear, and that people are even more wonderful than we hope.
Do you laugh at memes of yourself?
Pardon?
Do you laugh at memes of yourself when you see memes?
Some of them were hilarious and brilliant. And I also know that my delivery in that first debate, I felt after that first debate, those memes, the majority of them were not malevolent. Mm-hmm. I thought they were kind of brilliant and hilarious. I was on the floor laughing.
What's your favorite one?
Good memes are brilliant and hilarious.
What's your favorite one?
You had me at fuck the system. The couple kissing, you had me at fuck the system. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, let's talk about a politics of love a little bit also, just because now that you've gotten to know some of these other nominees, I'm sure a lot better than you had before, are there people that you really like as well, that you feel like I could work with that person?
Oh, they're really lovely people. I mean, I have not met Delaney, but everybody else has been very lovely, and I'm honored to be with them. And I don't think of myself as running against anyone. I think of myself as running with a lot of really great people. And that's another reason why I don't think this should be shut down. This is healthy for our democracy. It's healthy for the Democratic Party. Let people hear all these ideas. I tell people everywhere I go, you should, in those primary states, you should listen to all of us. That's your due diligence. This is what happens in a democracy. It's a town hall of ideas.
And we learned things. You said you agree with Andrew Yang now with his
on the
universal
UBI.
basic
I read his book and I went, yeah, I get it now. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know quite the way I knew it once I read that book.
That's interesting because he got that idea from Martin Luther King Jr. You quote Martin Luther King Jr. a lot.
Milton Friedman, who was the main articulator of trickle-down economics, he said, if you're going to have this completely market-based economy with no government interference, the only way this is safe is for there to be a universal basic income.
Now, tell us about this new department that you want to develop for elected president, the Department of Peace.
Well, you can't just take medicine. You have to cultivate your health. Mainstream understanding recognizes this now. We have an integrative, holistic approach to health. And my campaign is about an integrative, holistic approach to healing society. Our current political system is like the old allopathic medicine. You just wait till symptoms appear, and then you seek to eradicate or suppress them. We know now that's not the way it works. You have to cultivate peace just like we cultivate health. You can't just have a national security agenda that is based on the endless preparation for war, especially given how much money is being made by defense contractors doing that. This is what Eisenhower meant by the military-industrial complex. Now, I have a lot of respect for the military. My father fought in World War II. I think we would all agree the United States needs a strong military. But I see the military like you'd see a surgeon. If you're going to have surgery, you want to have the best surgeon, but you avoid surgery if at all possible. Right now, so we need to recognize sickness is the absence of health. Health isn't the absence of sickness. And war is the absence of peace. Peace isn't the absence of war. What's our national security agenda? That we're just going to keep preparing for war and hope maybe someday we'll back up into peace? It doesn't work that way. But if you look at where we spend our money, because a country is like a person. Where you spend your money is where your values are, where your intention flows. Okay. We spend $750 billion on our military budget. Then our State Department, which is diplomacy and development and mediation, that gets $40 billion. Within that, we spend $17 billion on USAID or humanitarian assistance and less than $1 billion on peace building. And what is peace building? Peace building are the things you do, which take as much sophistication and expertise as does military planning. And these are the things you do which statistically indicate there will be a higher level of peace and a lower level of conflict.
I didn't know that existed.
They do. And these factors are not going to surprise anybody in this room. Number one, expand economic opportunities for women.
Right.
Number two, expand educational opportunities for children. Number three, reduce violence against women. And number four, reduce unnecessary human suffering wherever possible. Because desperate people do desperate things.
That's right.
So for me, the core value of all domestic and international policy should be whatever helps people thrive. That's where peace comes from. That's where prosperity comes from, because it means people get to live their creativity and live their productivity that is already within them. Now, if we see large groups of desperate people as a national security risk, that's what our international policy should be. Large groups of desperate people are more vulnerable to ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces. They do more desperate things. What do you think's happening at the border? Except that all those desperate people in Honduras and El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala did what they felt they needed to do. So I want a national security. This is why I want a Department of Peace. I want the peace builders to have an equal place at the table of power as the military. Mm-hmm. Right now, they're on the periphery. It's kind of like, well, here's a little bit for you. As opposed to what the military gets, it should be a far more robust partnership between the military and the peace creators.
That sounds
Who are our peace creators?
It's perfectly normal, but it does not serve a short-term profit maximization for defense contractors' bottom line.
So it don't make money.
It doesn't make money.
Yeah.
All it does is provide the possibility of a survivable future.
War makes money.
But on the other hand, even though what we need to shift from a dirty economy to a green economy. We need to shift from a war economy to a peace economy, because right now 53 cents of every dollar goes towards defense. Mm-hmm. However, we want to really be clear about this. The money that you invest in education and the money that you invest in infrastructure is actually a better economic investment. So when people say, oh, well, our economy is based so much on it, that's not true. And also it's true that the same skills, the same manufacturing, the same research, the same development, the same building, the same creativity, the same genius that goes into propping up a military-industrial complex that goes over and beyond, by probably hundreds of billions of dollars, over and beyond the legitimate security needs of the United States. Those are the same skills and the same creativity that could easily be repurposed. I'm not saying easily. With careful planning, repurposed towards a peace economy of infrastructure and education and building this country and creating this new chapter of our history.
Department of Peace, I'm for that. Now, when you say creating a new chapter of the history, is it something like Germany, like where there's no statues of Hitler, or no monuments honoring Nazi soldiers, like is that what you mean?
Well, I'm talking about something much deeper than whether or not a statue exists. Mm-hmm. It's talking about a genuine return to such things as addressing our moral outs, our moral gaps between who we should be and who we say we are and how we're behaving. That's why I want the Department of Children and Youth to deal with these millions of chronically traumatized American children. We have children who are traumatized before preschool.
Right.
Where do you think this country's going to be in 20 years? Where are these children going to be? Not only what are we going to do with all these traumatized children, who are they going to turn into? Not only that, think of the millions and billions and possibly trillions of dollars that we are not financially going to actualize because we're not helping and forming the brains of these little children.
But when you talk about trauma, don't you think that some of those things continue the trauma? It seems like these people are celebrated. Like the slave masters are people who were bigots and racist. Like I'm from South Carolina, so you'll see Strom Thurmond's name on buildings, Strom Thurmond's name on highways.
But let's look at South Carolina. South Carolina had a $1 billion surplus and turned down Medicaid expansion. So that's on the level of policy where the injustice lies. Mm-hmm. To turn down Medicaid expansion, and you've got South Carolina is definitely one of those places where you've got these chronically traumatized children. I was just in New Hampshire, where 25% of the children in northern New Hampshire go to bed hungry at night. In the richest country in the world. Now, in terms of the statues, you're right. In Europe, you're not going to see a Goebbels or Goering or Hitler, a statue of them. I have felt, but you come from Charleston, so your opinion, you're a South Carolinian. It seems to me, why can't we take those statues down, put them in a museum, because they are part of American history, put them in a museum, and then in these beautiful, many of them are in beautiful squares, say to the contemporary artists, say to the artists of this time, say to the sculptors of this time, young ones, commemorate the fact that it had a happy ending. Commemorate the taking down of the Confederate flag, or at least at the very least that we're headed in the right direction. We are celebrating the positive narrative that we're going to carry out now. So it seems to me such an opportunity for artistic celebration of our time.
And our
of this
taxpayer dollars go to actually support a lot of these spaces where you might see those statues. And so you would want your money to support something that you support.
Yes, and it's kind of like when we talked about Beaufort, South Carolina. You go to Ground Zero. You go to ground. There's something very ritualistic, and it's a powerful vortex where one thing occurred. I was yesterday down at the World Trade Center. It's very powerful there.
Yeah, you can feel it.
You
feel the energy.
commemorate.
Yeah.
You commemorate a place of evil by replacing it with a thing of light.
No, I don't think you're crazy at all, Marianne. I actually agree with a lot of the things you say. I used to like you when you was on Oprah Super Soul Conversations. But do you ever feel like you're going crazy? Because you're talking love, you're talking peace, you're talking happiness, and everybody's looking at you like you're the one that's insane.
No, I don't feel like I'm going crazy, but I feel like American culture
Can be disappointing.
a heartless mentality is insane. But I don't find that in the American people. The American people are fine. I mean, we're just like everybody else. The gap that's so dangerous today is a gap between the consciousness or the will of the American people and the way our political establishment operates, which has been hijacked by an amoral economic system. And that is insane. When you have an economic system that places fiduciary responsibility for stockholders at the expense, when you serve that at the expense of any moral or ethical responsibility to people, to workers, to planet, to environment, that is insane.
Yeah.
And that has hijacked our government, unfortunately. Our government does more to advocate for that and those short-term corporate profits than it does to advocate for us. And that level of heartlessness, which is deeply insane, leads to chaos, leads to danger. And I think that those of us who know better must stand up now.
In your opinion, what role has social media played in your campaign as far as with politics and your campaign specifically?
It has not played enough of one, and that's why I hope that people will donate, because so much of what you can do with social media does have to do with advertising. It does have to do with a lot of the digital work that costs money. I certainly am out there on Instagram, and I'm out there on Twitter, and I'm out there on Facebook, but I would love to do much more.
I think it's helped you with name brand recognition, though, only for like maybe some of these people who didn't know you before you started running for president. Because every time it's a debate, you cut through with something.
Right.
Whether they're joking on you in the first debate or the second debate, you say something that everybody agreed with, you cut through.
Well, even in the first one, I said it funny, but when you look at what I said, it was my delivery that invited some mockery. But if you actually look at what I said, it was as serious as what I said on the second one.
Did you see the satire article that the New Yorker did on you?
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting about that? One of my interns actually, I guess she thinks it's a real article.
I know, that's
so
that's
she
the
has
problem.
the soul reallocation question. Like, you would rather call abortion soul reallocation. Where did you come up with this phrase?
You know, it would be funny if it weren't so sad.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I even look at that 1% in the Quinnipiac poll today. If they had not done that hard-on smear on me, I'd be up at 2 or 3 or possibly more.
So you think stuff like the New Yorker article hurts?
Well, that is a satire. That particular article just made me roll my eyes.
Yeah.
But the larger narrative of some of the stuff that's been said, of course it did.
So is it hurtful? I mean, you're a cancer.
Oh,
like
is
me,
it
so
hurtful to
I
me
know.
personally?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a little girl. I'm not a victim. I'm not, it saddens me for our democracy. And also, I'll tell you something. I naively thought the left didn't act this way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
They're the
right.
worst.
Now, I knew that the left is called a circular firing squad.
Yes.
But, boy.
They're the worst.
And to see so many women participating, that's been pretty depressing.
Did you read the 1619 Project in the New York Times?
It's profound.
Yeah.
And really pivotal. And I think I emailed you. I can't imagine that not getting a Pulitzer Prize.
Because when I read it, I thought about, like, yo, with all these conversations about reparations, there's nobody that can read this and not say this community is owed something.
That's right. I agree with you. And partly, also, I talk in my campaign about being an integrated politics. Sometimes when I'm talking to people about reparations, I always say to people, don't just hear the data. Really allow yourself to think about what this means. So you're told you're not a slave anymore, but where are you supposed to go? What are you supposed to do? And that's why Martin Luther King would say 100 years later, they were freed, but what were they freed to? So the beauty of that 1619 project to me is that they brought in more than journalists. They brought in artists. They brought in poets. They brought in literary people. So it's such a holistic treatment so that you don't just read facts. You're that's genuine literary excellence and is there so that you're thrown back personally. And that's where we need to be about politics. That's where we need to be about history. And what I find talking about reparations in the whitest states in America, in New Hampshire, it was the 400th anniversary of the landing of the first ship in Jamestown in 1619. I was in New Hampshire. The abolitionist movement emerged in large part from New Hampshire, the early evangelicals there, the early Quakers. So and I was speaking in a church that morning, and it was a perfect place to be really taking in it. A religious or spiritual context is a container for allowing ourselves to feel horror in a way that we need to, in a safe, emotionally safe way. And so that 1619 project is what politics has to be now, that we approach these things with more than just intellectual analysis, but with our hearts and our feelings and our deep reflection that goes beyond just this happened and then this happened and this is what we should change and this is what we should change. We have to go deeper. And the conventional political conversation is so superficial. It is so shallow. It is inadequate to the task at hand.
I was going to ask you, what is the temperature for reparations around the country, like with people and the government?
Fabulous. I get standing ovations in Iowa and in New Hampshire. People, the American people, I do not believe the average American is a racist. I think the average American, though, is woefully undereducated about history. They just either don't know, they were never taught, they don't remember. That's why things like the 1619 project, I've been saying for many months, it started in 1619. And now because of things like this article, then you say, okay, it's 250 years of slavery plus 100 years of another wave of institutionalized white supremacy, 350 years. That's longer than the United States has been in existence. So I find people like, wow. And then you explain the narrative. You explain and then you go all the way. And what did the lynchings, what were they except domestic terror? What was Ku Klux Klan except domestic terror? What did the Civil Rights Act do? What did the Voting Rights Act do? The Voting Rights Act been chipped away at since 2013. Then you continue mass incarceration, racial disparity in sentencing, in policemen, etc. By the time you finish the whole thing, and then you talk about Germany paying $89 billion in reparations, didn't mean the Holocaust didn't happen, but it's gone far towards establishing reconciliation between Germany and the Jews of Europe. By the time you get to the end, you go, how can we not?
Yeah.
How can we not?
Annie up,
It doesn't
word
even
up.
make sense.
And that we could do this. We could be a generation and say, yeah, we got this next thing done.
You think these candidates really care about reparations, or is it just a good talking point?
Oh, I get that they're good people. I don't think this is about people who don't care. I get that it's about people who are themselves so entrenched. If you want to know, and listen, a Democrat has to win in 2020. That's got to be our bottom line. Let's be very clear about that, and I will show up for that. I'm sure we all will.
Right.
But if you even look at how this campaign is being run from above, DNC, et cetera, that tells you everything you need to know about how locked up the system is.
Yeah, I'm so scared. I know you got to go. I'm just so scared because, I think about, the last Democratic primary, and like the DNC basically took it from Bernie Sanders. And I'm thinking about like the fact that we know Russians are interfering with the elections. We know voter suppression is real. We saw Mitch McConnell turn down an election security bill. Like, how do we even know the fight is fixed? Fight's not fixed in 2020. How do we know the fight's fair?
Well, the only thing, this is the deal. No matter what they do, and they will be shameless, no matter what the Republicans do, just assume they'll be shameless. No matter what the Russians do and assume they'll be something, there's only one thing that can override all of it.
What?
And that is if enough of us vote.
Right.
See,
I don't want
that's-
people to be discouraged and be like, I'm not voting anyway. You have to still go out and vote because they'll make you feel like, well, your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count.
But let's deconstruct that. Those people have said their vote didn't matter. In too many cases, they've been right. So in too many cases, not voting was a rebellion, however dysfunctional you and I might find it. It was a passive it was non-resistance. It was resistance. It was passive unwilling. It was an unwillingness to participate in a system that people knew was not there for them. And about that, they were right. That's why I thought it was going to be either Bernie or Trump, because they were the only two that named the rage. They were the only two that named the despair, the only two that validated that it existed. Not that I'm not saying Hillary didn't care, but she didn't name it. So it was going to be a populist cry of despair or an authoritarian populist of despair. That's why I believe Bernie would have won 2 years ago. Now, then the issue is we have to realize Trump did not win just because of all the people who were so excited about Trump. And if we were to win again, it wouldn't just be because of all the people who were excited about Trump. It's about all those millions of people who didn't vote.
Yeah.
And if we don't give them something more real this time, why would it be any different? We can't just count on people hating Trump to defeat Trump.
Right.
We have to inspire something, and that only happens if you get real. And so take the topic of reparations. People, the conventional system says, well, you can't go too far because people won't like that. I see it the opposite. I said, no, what people want to hear is, can somebody have a real conversation here, please? Can somebody just talk for real, whether I agree with you or not? That's what people want to hear. That's the energy. That's why I'm saying he will not be beaten by an insider politics game. The part of the brain that intellectually analyzes an issue is not the part of the brain that decides who to vote for. We're like an alcoholic family system where the kids can feel mommy and daddy aren't talking about what's really true.
Yeah, we see the
feel
bullshit.
it.
Yeah.
And yet that system looks at somebody who's talking a deeper radical truth telling, and they don't want her around.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Right.
We need somebody that's telling the truth, and we need somebody that can excite people the way the Popeye's chicken sandwich excited people.
Is that an endorsement?
No.
And last thing
either.
I wanted to ask you was, you've been very consistent on the things that you believe in and things you've been saying, even before running for president. What do you think about candidates who we look at their past and things that they've put into motion? What do you think about taking that into consideration when we look at them today, even if it was something from 10, 20, 30 years ago, and holding them accountable today for that? Because you haven't had issues like that.
Well, I'm not a perfect human being. None of us are running for saints. You can look in anybody's past and find things that are cringeworthy, myself included.
But what about policies that affected people?
That's different. First of all, my whole campaign is based on the notion that a nation can atone and a nation can be redeemed. And I believe that about a nation because I believe that about individuals. So to me, it would have to do as much as it matters what happened, it also matters to me what the person has to say about it now. And also, I think, can we get real? To me, we should be taking a deeper look also at how much money some of these people have taken, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars from the very corporate forces that now they're saying they're going to go to Washington and fight for us.
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Williamson, it is always a pleasure talking to you. How do we make sure you're in the next debate?
Thank you
How
so
do we
much.
make that happen? Because I know for a fact ain't nobody going to be talking about reparations in the debate that's coming up.
Thank you. Marianne2020.com or MarianneForPresident.com, whatever. Send me a buck. Send me $5. Send me $10. Send me it's anything your heart says to send me. Give me the opportunity to build an infrastructure that can compete, and I'll rock this thing.
Does the money roll over? You said you earned $130,000? So
130,000 unique donors.
Yeah,
Does that
you
roll
need-
So
over?
now for the next one, I think I need 150,000.
Right.
No, more. Do you know?
For the
For the
your fourth debate is still the 130.
130. But what about poll numbers?
It's still that you still
At least 2%.
2%.
Oh, that's all for the fourth? Okay, good. Well, but the thing is, in order to get the poll numbers up, you need to have more of a campaign. I see my campaign as kind of like a bonsai tree. It's just like other big trees. It just has these limitations. You know, there are candidates who are spending already, in Iowa alone, $10 million.
Do you feel like you can't compete?
I can't. I don't need 10 million because I think I got a message here. But I definitely, yeah. I mean, it's not mysterious. How many field organizers can you hire? How many digital ads can you buy? How many videos can you make? When and if you can get on television? It's not mysterious what you do with the money, and all that's quite public. So, yeah. I mean, look. I feel I was at 2% at the Mammoth poll the other day, 1% today. And yeah, if I had more money and if they hadn't smeared me like that, I'd be higher. I'm not finished. My heart says, I'm here. No, I'm here. And I'll be here as long as, this is not just my decision. It's the decision of people who support it, volunteer, send in money, talk about it on their social, and people like yourselves to whom I am deeply grateful. Thank you so much.
Do you know who exactly smeared you? Do you know?
Who?
Do you think you know who smeared you? Like, do you think
Not
it came
sure.
from one
Don't know.
source?
Don't know, but somebody was writing some talking points because they were all the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah. I am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's Marianne Williamson. It's The Breakfast Club.
God bless.